Okay, one of the things we've been talking about, this is obviously a Second Amendment show, but it's also a political show, and we've been talking about political violence. In fact, this isn't the first time we've mentioned this. We've talked about it a lot for the last couple of years on how political violence is becoming way too common, and that there has been an environment that's been fostered, especially by the political left, and how they've basically created an environment where political violence seems okay. They've even done things like supported those who are committing political violence. For example, when there were riots in Minnesota, Kamala Harris actually helped contribute to a fund to defend those who were out there rioting. I mean, there have been real steps taken, real rhetoric and real steps taken to, again, foster this environment of left-wing political violence. So I just found an article from MSN.com, surprisingly enough, titled "Left-Wing Terrorism is on the Rise." So they're not just calling it political violence, they're calling it terrorism. And they're indicating left-wing terrorism. No matter how hard ideologues try to exclusively blame their political foes for acts of political violence, the truth is that violent extremists today emerge from across the political spectrum. We have studied this problem and believe that our data can help illuminate an issue too often defined by partisan finger-pointing as part of a study to be published this week by the Center for Strategic and International Studies. We compiled and analyzed data sent from 750 attacks and plots in the United States from January 1st, 1994 to July 4th, 2025. Our research focuses only on instances of terrorism, which we define as attacks or plots by non-state actor attempting to achieve a political end and to exert a psychological influence on a broad population. Among other details, the data set includes the types of weapons used, the intended targets, and the number of fatalities and the ideology of the perpetrators. So they're really taking a very thorough, analysis of exactly what's going on over a big time period. Following that trend, according to our analyst, violence from the left accounted for 4 plots and attacks from 94 to 2000 compared to, wait a minute here. Yeah, okay, so left accounted for 4 plots and attacks from 94 to 2000 compared to 144 on the right. So in other words, what they're saying is that it was far more common in the late 90s for right-wing political folks to commit acts of violence. However, what they go on to say is that as of late, that has completely shifted. This year, however, violence on the right has plummeted. Only one right-wing terrorist incident occurred in the first 6 months of 2025, the June assassination of Minnesota State Legislator Melissa Horman and her husband, which I'd argue, it was against somebody on the left, but I'm not sure they could really truly assign the person who did that as being right-wing. The extraordinary drop-off is too recent to allow any definitive explanations. The number of terrorist incidents often fluctuates over short periods, but Trump's reelection could be a key factor. His victory deflated election conspiracies that had once motivated many extremists. Since then, Trump has taken a maximal approach on some of the far right's highest priority issues. So under Trump, right-wing extremists may feel less need to mobilize because they sense that their interests are already being taken care of. But Kirk's death could change this calculus. Conservatives, including members of Congress and online influencers, use the assassinated to support the contention that the left is engaged in war. Okay, so let's see. What we really want to talk about here is so they go on to talk about how that it's not equal anymore. Basically, that the right back in the 90s was committing acts of violence, but now the left has come on super strong, and in fact, there's outperforming the right when it comes to political violence. So what we want to talk about, and I want to show that even after the assassination of Charlie Kirk, the rhetoric from the left hasn't really stopped like we'd hope it was. People haven't gotten the message, or at least aren't acting on the message, or don't understand the complexities of the message. There are still left-wing, leaders and talking heads and politicians and influencers that are continuing to create an environment where violence from the left is okay. When you tell people that, hey, the right is evil, or they're trying to kill you, or they're trying to take your natural rights away, when you compare them to Nazis and Hitler and that sort of thing, you create an environment where they believe that the only thing left to do is commit acts of violence. I mean, how did we stop the Nazis? We had to invade Europe. So when you compare them to such extremism, even though they're talking about simple political issues, then of course you're going to create an environment where people that maybe are a little on the fringe, but even people that aren't necessarily on the fringe, and that's one thing that I don't think folks talk about enough, is a lot of times with some kind of random shooting or a mass shooting or some kind of murder that makes the headlines, it becomes really clear that the person who committed it was crazy. And you can kind of chalk it up to a mental health issue. With Charlie Kirk, it's not clear that this person had mental health issues. In fact, it looked like they did not have mental health issues at all. It looks like this person was simply motivated by politics, and that makes it very, very different, and that's exactly what we're talking about. So let's look at, and I thought this was actually a pretty funny example. Mark Ruffalo is a guy, he's an actor, he's the Hulk. And for people who aren't familiar, he's had some, some extremely important acting chops in the Hulk, and hard-hitting movies like 13 going on 30. Not exactly, I guess he is, though. I was going to say not exactly A-list, but I think this guy is. I think Mark Ruffalo is A-list, but certainly isn't, respected for his, his acting chops. He's been in a couple of silly movies, but he decided to weigh in on politics. And what's funny is he was being interviewed by a guy named Rainn Wilson, who was in the show The Office. And Rainn Wilson's interview basically started out by saying, hey, we got to do something different. Things have gotten too heated. Things have gotten too extreme. And so he talks to Mark Ruffalo. But the funny thing about this interview that you're going to see is that Mark doesn't listen at all. He continues on with this rhetoric that I think is pretty fair to say, led to extreme acts of violence. So let's watch the interview.
But this is the problem in the world. Like, where do we go when violence is the only solution?
Yeah.
Like, that's the final solution. That ethos is what we're going to embrace.
Yeah.
Which is where we're at now. I mean, people are walking around with weapons of war. This is a weapon of war. I mean, I don't know.
So this part, he goes into blaming it on guns. People are walking around with weapons of war. So he's got to get his stab in on the Second Amendment. So continue.
What killed him, but more often than not, we're seeing people killed with weapons of war that are nothing.
It was a sniper rifle.
Yeah,
so this was
nothing
planned.
More than to kill human beings.
Yeah.
That's what these weapons are for, And so when we keep signing off on that as a nation. We're signing off on more and more of when you keep signing off on those weapons being acceptable, you're actually tacitly signing off on them being used on human beings as the ultimate solution to conflict, any kind of conflict.
Okay, pause it. Okay, so first off, neither one of these guys know what the hell they're talking about when it comes to guns.
No.
He used a deer rifle. I mean, technically this thing at one point was used in war, but that was about 20 years ago. Yeah. But now it's a deer hunting rifle. That's number one. But what I want you to really pay attention to, okay, it's okay. It's fun. It's fun to poke fun at actors. Yeah, they don't know anything about rifles. They don't know anything about firearms. Okay, get it. But tacitly signed off on. So he basically just said, without too much interpretation, he basically said, hey, look, if you continue to be okay with the Second Amendment, then you continue to say that political violence is okay and that murder is okay and that assassinations are okay. So he's now telling everybody who follows him, which, by the way, he has a big following on X, on Twitter. He's saying, hey, you know what? If you know somebody who's pro-Second Amendment, you know somebody who's okay with murder. I mean, that's not an interpretation of what he said. That's exactly what he just said. Yeah. So keep going.
Ideological conflict. If that's why I don't know why he was murdered. I'm assuming that's what it was. I don't know why.
We don't know. Yeah.
We see, in Minnesota, we haven't been talking about those people who were murdered. Those are political assassinations. This is like now we've had 2 in this year alone.
Okay, pause for a second. So people keep bringing up what was horrible, sad, and tragic. In fact, this article talked about it too. There was a lawmaker in Minnesota who was murdered because she was a lawmaker. Now, there's a lot more to it, but what he just said was, we're not hearing anything about it. Yeah, you're right, Mark. No one on the right stood up and cheered and celebrated when someone on the left was murdered. You're making the point that what you're doing is wrong. We were all quiet and said, yeah. The other thing is, it's just not equal. A state lawmaker that no one had ever heard of, compared with Charlie Kirk and the movement and momentum that he had, it's just not equal. To compare the two is pretty ludicrous. Or what I should say is, to compare the results of the two, to that, hey, this country should have an equal reaction for a lawmaker that no one's ever heard of, compared to, an activist that so many people see on a daily basis. And that's somehow, I mean, it's just completely ridiculous to compare the two, or to equal, to pretend that they're equal in any way.
Yeah, I think most people had a strong opinion about Charlie Kirk, whether it was positive or negative. A lot of people had heard of him in the United States. A lot of people had a strong opinion about him. And the main difference, I think, is that obviously they're both political violence. They're both awful.
Yep.
However, one was done on camera in front of tons of people. I know somebody who was there with her and her daughter were there when he was murdered, and they will live with that experience for the rest of their life. It was a traumatic event for a lot of people. There were instantly videos online showing the moment that he was killed. We didn't get any of that with the Minnesota lawmakers. We got a lot of, articles and stuff after the fact saying, oh, they were brutally killed, this is what happened. But there were not videos and videos and videos just everywhere on social media showing the moment of death. I think that although Charlie Kirk and Donald Trump are not equal politically, the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, that was a similar as far as the outrage, the impact, the
scope.
Yeah, the scope of it, the amount of people that were there who were watching it happen in real life. Like, that feels a lot different to me than finding out the next day or 2 days later that somebody that you've never heard of was politically, murdered, assassinated in their home. It doesn't have the same kind of social media churn effect that this had.
Right. Now, exactly. And I still don't, honestly, it's sad and tragic. It's horrible that this lawmaker in Minnesota died. I don't even remember her name. I didn't know her name before. I can't remember her name now. They quite simply are on a scale. They aren't similar. But it is important to note that, yeah, you're right, Mark Ruffalo. Nobody stood up and cheered like the sick people that you are representing, the way that they did it. But here's where things get really, really interesting. Now, listen very closely to what is about to happen. Listen to the path that Mark Ruffalo goes down and what Rainn kind of stops him from saying. So go ahead and play it.
It's terrifying because, first of all, it's lacking empathy, It's like it's dehumanizing to us, and we see what we see overseas. When you take away every other form of disagreement, when you take away people's voices, when you take away their ability to express themselves, when you take away their freedoms, when you take away their rights, when you know.
Or even if you create an environment of fear where people feel fearful to express themselves, whether on the political right.
Okay. The path I think that Mark Ruffalo was going down and was saved by Rainn, either intentionally or unintentionally, Ruffalo was saying, hey, look, when you take away people's voice, when you take away their right, the path he was going down was, what are they left with other than political violence?
Yeah,
That's where he was going. And then Rainn turned it around and said, yeah, like the way that they murdered Charlie Kirk, and now people are afraid to stand up because they murdered Charlie Kirk. I think that Rainn saved him from making an atrociously horrible statement. Now keep rolling and watch and see what else he says here.
Right of the political left, like, oh, I can't go to college campuses now and speak my opinion?
Yes.
Right or wrong?
Where does that head? Where is the final destination of that?
He's still going down the path.
It's bloodshed.
And it's start.
There it is.
My fear for this is that it's starting a cycle on both the right and the left.
That scares me.
Like Gandhi, an eye for an eye makes the whole world blind.
Yes.
Kind of
Okay,
continued.
We're done with the video. So I wanted to show you that he hasn't learned in any way. And if you look at Mark Ruffalo's statements, if you look at his Twitter feed, if you look at his past interviews, this guy is a left-wing extremist. And I can't say for sure that that's the path he was going down.
It felt like it.
It felt like it, though.
Yeah.
He was basically saying, hey, look, when you continue to disagree with the left and they continue to be mad at you, they're gonna, what's left to do other than political violence? Where Rainn kind of turned it around and was like, yeah, when somebody gets killed on a college campus, then it's going to make people less likely to talk about their political views, and kind of saved him.
I agree. He kind of saved him. But did you hear how Rainn also was saying now people on the left are afraid to go to college campuses?
Yeah.
Isn't that what he said?
Yeah.
A conservative just got killed on a college campus. Why are we talking about what the left is afraid to talk about? They're not afraid. They're talking about whatever they want. All the professors are on the left.
Right.
Everybody on a college campus is left.
Yeah. No one on the left got assassinated.
Yeah. Yes.
Biden didn't get shot in the ear. Trump did.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Anyway, they're not. None of them have learned. By the way, he goes on to talk about. Actually, can you keep playing it a little bit? No, too late. Okay, so he goes on to say, "Hey, look." Mark Ruffalo goes on to say, "Hey, look, you got to understand. I know what it's like to be the victim of gun violence." And he talks about how his brother was killed by gun violence, and Rainn Wilson kind of goes, "Oh, gee," gives him this credibility. So it turns out, I looked it up, if you pull up this article on ABC News, Mark Ruffalo's brother, they are pretty sure, was killed when he was playing Russian roulette.
Wow.
So it wasn't a suicide. I don't think it was a suicide. It doesn't appear to be a murder, although they're still a little fuzzy on that. But in this article by ABC News, Mark Ruffalo's brother was killed when he was playing Russian roulette, which, there you go, lawyer. Ruffalo died playing with gun, and it goes on to talk about how Scott Ruffalo was probably playing Russian roulette when he shot himself. I don't think that's gun violence.
No, it's a little different. I think, if you swallow a knife and you die, like, you were dumb. That wasn't a stabbing. There's a little bit of a difference there.
But anyway, the important thing I wanted to show you is that, first off, why are we listening to actors on this?
Yeah.
Rainn Wilson and Mark Ruffalo, Dwight Schrute, right? Wasn't that his name from The Office? And Hulk Smash. These are the people that were like, yeah, man, let's have them weigh in. Where do they feel the world is going? I don't know. They're actors. Who cares? They read words off of paper. Nobody wants to know what their opinion is, or nor should they care.
And I feel very similarly to how I feel about politicians who are weighing in on gun control but still have guards. Like, is Mark going to say, oh, my security guards shouldn't carry guns now? Like, no. He still wants to be protected with guns. He just doesn't want us to be protected.
He doesn't want us to be,
guns.
and most importantly, he's not going to change his tone. He's not going to change the words that he uses. Clearly, in this interview, he's going to continue to create an environment where basically he was making an excuse for left-wing political violence. That's exactly what he was doing in this interview. I think that Rainn Wilson interrupted him and kind of softened the blow, but Mark Ruffalo hasn't learned a thing. He's going to continue to create an environment where left-wing political violence is, he even said the only solution is in his words. So anyway, I thought that was interesting. Hey, thanks for watching Gun Owners Radio. I hope you loved that clip. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and follow us on social media, and check out our website at gunownersradio.com.